Ego likes to talk. Alright, so the Great Pyramid, verifiable proof that we have no idea how it was built. Alright, you can just cut that shit out. I'm not here to make any sort of claims. I'm not here to speculate about how they were built, right? Not here to provide any sort of answers like that or even attempt to. I'm just asking questions, and I'm just trying to show you that we're so far from understanding how they were built, right? There's a lot of theories out there, and I don't think any of them stand any ground, especially the ones coming from mainstream archaeology. So let me explain. First of all, like the title says, I plan on taking a scientific approach to this. Believe it or not, I don't even think that mainstream Egyptologists take a scientific approach to this. Let me tell you why. Let's go ahead and take a look at the scientific method real quick, and I can show you what I mean. So I just found this picture off the internet, but this is like grade school knowledge. Step 1 of the scientific method is to ask a question, right? Step 2 is to do some research, and once you've done your research, step 3 is to ask a hypothesis. Right? A hypothesis being the idea that you assume to be true for the question that you've asked, right? And then step 4, test with an experiment. Alright, this is a big one. I want to focus on this one. The experiment is something that you use to test your hypothesis. A matter of fact, your experiment needs to be defined and clear enough that other people can test your experiment and to see if they get the same results. Big problem I have here is that mainstream Egyptologists just decide to skip over this step, right? And the next one, to analyze the results. They can't analyze the results because they haven't created any experiments to test their hypothesis, right? You don't believe me? Let's take a closer look. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. First thing you do is you ask a question. How was the Great Pyramid built? That's the question. Then you do some research, right? I don't question that they did the research. Step 3, come up with a hypothesis. This is the idea that you have that you assume to be true based on your research. So what is the idea that's most commonly accepted by the educational system? It varies a little bit, but it pretty much goes like this. So around 2500 BC, the pharaoh Khufu decided he wanted to build himself a tomb, and he wanted to build it as a pyramid, right? So he developed this labor army, this, like some people say it was slaves, some people say it wasn't slaves, that anyways, that doesn't matter. He got a shit ton of people together to cut stones out of these granite stones out of Aswan, which is about 500 miles away from Giza, which is where the pyramids are built. They would take the stones from the quarry and they would ship them down the Nile using boats. Once they got to Giza, they would then roll these stones on logs and roll them up ramps using like ropes and pulleys, I guess, to stack them on top of each other. All this is sounding familiar, right? Like this is the most common hypothesis, like some form of this. The details vary, but this is what is accepted and taught in the educational system. Now that's fine if you think that that's what happened, right? That's your hypothesis. The next step in the scientific method is to test your hypothesis using an experiment. My problem is that the people that are making these claims have not tested them. There are other people that have tested them, and we're going to get to that in a minute, but I think you can't report something as any sort of fact or even close to fact unless you've tested it for yourself, right? So what I want to do is I want to take a look at the claims that mainstream Egyptologists are making and see if they hold any ground, okay? So first, let's take a look at the time frame in which they think the pyramid was built. Like I said, it varies from about 10 years to about 30 years. The most commonly used number is 20 years. How many stones are there? Again, this varies anywhere from 2 million to 2.5 million, the most common number being 2.3 million. So let's take these numbers and do some math real quick. Alright, so we're going to use the most commonly used numbers first. So 20 years, right? 20 years. Let's figure out how many days that is. It's 7,000. I'm going to write all this down. That's 7,300 days, right? Most commonly used number for the number of stones is 2.3 million. Let's divide that by our days, and we get 315 stones a day. Break that down by the hour. 24 hours. That's 13 stones. Dyslexic. 13 stones an hour. Let's break that down even a little bit further. We got 60 minutes an hour. Divide that by our 13 stones. So you would have to place a stone, one stone. Good God, how did I do that again? One stone every 4.6 minutes. Right? I don't know if that. I'm not even gonna say anything about that yet. Just to show you that I'm being fair too. Let's go ahead and do the math over again. This time we're gonna use the most conservative numbers. Right? Let's start over. Let's give them 30 years this time. So you got 30 years by 365 days. So we got 10,950 days. Right? Let's say they only had to place 2 million stones. Okay, divided by our days. I better not misspell stones again. So we got 182 stones a day. I had to think about that for a sec. Alright, so 182 stones a day. Let's bring that back up, sorry. 182 stones a day divided by 24 hours. We got about 7.5 stones every hour. Let's just call it 7 stones an hour. And let's figure out what that is by the minute. So we got 60 minutes divided by, so just call it 7. That's alright, so that's 1 stone every 8.5 minutes. So you can see, I mean, it's almost like twice the amount of time, but still, every 8 minutes. Every 8 minutes. We're just gonna, for the rest of the video, I'm just gonna refer to it using the most commonly used numbers, because I could show you what it would be if they placed 2.5 million in 10 years, right? It's something like every 2 minutes, right? So we're just going to kind of cut it in the middle, call it every 5 minutes. They place a stone every 5 minutes, 5, 10 minutes, whatever. Doesn't matter. So a stone every 5 minutes. That's if they work 24 hours a day and never stop, never skipped a beat. 24 hours a day, non-stop, for 20 years. They did this. Think about this. These stones are coming from 500 miles away. New York to DC isn't even half that distance. 500 miles, you could go from New York to DC and back. That's about 500 miles. How long would that take you in a car? Now let's take into account how heavy these stones were. The average stone was 2.5 tons. Right? 2.5 tons. If you're American, that comes out to about that's like over 5,000 pounds. Or if you're not American and you use the metric system like everybody else, that's 2,500 kilograms, right? But there's also stones that weigh as much as like 60 to 80 tons. 80 tons? That's over 150,000 pounds. And they were cutting these out and moving them, shipping them down the Nile at a rate of every 1 stone every 5 minutes. I just need to go on a real quick rant real quick, alright? How does this make any fucking sense to you at all, right? Let's just say that the stones only weighed 300 pounds, right? You really think that any number of people could organize they could logistically organize an operation where they could they could cut these stones out, place them on a boat, ship that boat down the Nile. Another boat pulls up immediately after it, because remember, they're going in one stone every 5 minutes, right? Every 5 minutes, they're putting another stone on a boat, shipping it down the Nile. 500 miles. 500 miles. How long would that take you in a fucking car, dude? Like 8 hours at least, right? So how many boats are on the river at any one given time, right? Think about all these boats. Then think about all, they get down to Giza, and then they have a bunch of logs too. They have to have a shitload of logs to roll these stones. Where do they get all the fucking wood? Where'd all the wood come from? I don't see any forests in Egypt. I don't think there are forests in Egypt at any point in time within the last 6,000 years. So where'd all the wood come from? Supposedly they went and got it from Europe. So now you expand the operation. They're going up to Europe to get wood, and they're shipping that back, right? They had to build the boats for that. Where'd they get all the food? Who's cooking all the food this whole time? Remember, they're working 24 hours a day to make these numbers work, right? And nothing ever slowed down. Nobody ever got into a fight, right? And on the ramp and caused them to not, move a stone up the ramp. There was never a storm. No boats ever got blown over. Nobody was ever late for work. When did they eat? When did they take breaks? So they would sleep, and then somebody would come in the night shift, and they would just work at night, right? Also, just think about how accurately they had to place the stones, right? They had to be cut and measured almost exactly, so that when you place them on top of each other, that you don't fuck up the shape of a pyramid, right? Look at how accurately the pyramid is shaped. It's not even a 4-sided pyramid, it's actually 8 sides. If you look at it from top-down view, you can see that each side is actually 2 sides where it comes in. Think about how accurately they had to place these, and they were able to do this every 5 minutes. They were able to place one of these things, cut it, move it, and place it. I'm sorry, but I don't see how you could accept this at all using common sense, right? But we're not using common sense, I guess. We're just looking at the facts, right? So let me get back to just trying to look at this scientifically. Is this verifiable? Could you do this? Is it at all possible, if you had the right number of people with the right amount of willpower and physical strength and everything to do this? Could it be done? Because in all honesty, it doesn't really matter what I think. All that matters is, can you prove it? Right? If you can prove it, it doesn't matter how I feel about it at all. So the question is, has anybody tried to prove it? The answer is yes. There are people who have tried to prove this. You know what happened? They failed miserably. Now let's take a look at this. So the first thing you'd have to do is get the stones, right? You'd have to cut the stones out. So what do Egyptologists say about how they did this? Well, they used copper tools. Handheld tools, chisels, hammers, things like this, right? And they cut the stones out. So has anybody tried to do this? They have. Let me go ahead and show you what happened too.
But even with reinforcements and after hours of pounding, they barely made a dent. After days of work, their copper chisels and stone pounders are barely making a dent. Brown is wearing down tools at an extraordinary rate. The copper chisel the ancient Egyptians would have used lasts only a few dozen strikes. The heating pounding cycle is repeated over and over.
Are you ready? I'm ready. Let's go.
Until the shape is just right.
They must have amassed more copper for building the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx than just about any place in the world in the 3rd millennium BC. I mean, it just must have been a huge cost in copper. All right, we have a big block of granite here. So how's this copper going to cut this granite?
Even with teeth, the copper alone is too soft.
We're going to put sand inside the groove, and we're going to put this saw on top of the sand, and then let the sand do the cutting.
Now, Dennis, will we see any progress in our lifetime?
Yes, if you came back in an hour's time, you would see about a 4 millimeter cut down into the stone.
You're kidding. In an hour, you'll be 4 millimeters down?
Well, I've been doing a lot of experiments, and I can guarantee that this will cut through the stone at about 4 millimeters an hour.
The sawing went wonderful once we switched over to using water with the sand. As you can see here, we achieved this in just a few days.
I just recently came across this footage. I'm going to give credit where credit's due. There's a guy named Jimmy who runs the Bright Insight channel. He got the footage from somewhere else, but if you like this subject, you like thinking about this objectively, definitely go check out his channel. He talks about this and many other things. Very informative and well thought out man. So check it out. The link will be in the description down below. But you can see it for yourself right there. There are people using these methods to try and cut stone. Will it cut stone? I guess you could say yeah. I think you could probably cut a piece of stone with a string too, right? But could they cut the stone? Yes. Question is, could they cut out a 2.5 ton stone in 5 minutes? I don't care how many people you have, it's one cut. You can only really have 2, maybe 3 or 4 people cutting it. I don't care how strong you are, how many people you got doing this. Does this method prove that you can cut out a stone in 5 minutes? So what about moving the stones? I think a lot of you have probably seen the footage of some guy, building a Stonehenge in his backyard, right? So yeah, you can move the stones, right? No problem, right? Just take a look at that.
A simple explanation for this, to move a block about the weight of a minivan, would be to place a stone underneath it. And once I balance on it, I can spin it. Of course, with that spin, you've seen I didn't go anywhere. But I got 2 handles on my lever, and I could place another stone on this side. Now, every time I spin a half rotation on each stone, I move the block horizontally, the distance between the stones.
Honestly, that's pretty fucking amazing, right? But does it show how they moved the stones for the Great Pyramid? Right? Did he use any ramps? No, he just moved stones horizontally. And how long did it take him to move that stone? How far could he move that stone in a allotted amount of time using this method?
With my own output, I could move a 1-ton block 300 feet per hour.
So does this prove anything? Does this prove how they built the pyramids? It doesn't, no. It proves that this guy did something really cool, but it doesn't explain how they placed stones on top of each other, right? I mean, you would think that if we could build anything close to the pyramids, that somebody would try. Well, guess what? Somebody did try. And they couldn't even do it using modern technology. In 1978, a Japanese corporation, Nippon, tried to build a 9-step pyramid, right? And they were going to use the original methods, right? So when they went to go cut the stones, they tried to use the same tools, copper, chisel, hammers, things like that. But they couldn't get the stones out until they used a jackhammer, right? So they were able to get the stones out. So they tried to then ship the stones down the Nile using wooden boats, but they couldn't do it. They ended up having to use semi-trucks and steamboats. Right? So they finally got all their stones down to the plateau and where they were going to build it. And they built ramps and everything like that. They tried to place the stones like that, but they had to use helicopters and cranes to do it, to place these stones. And just look at this thing, dude. Look at this. It looks like garbage in comparison to the Great Pyramid. Look at those gaps, right? Look at the Great Pyramid. You can't even fit a sheet of paper between the stones. So, this hypothesis has been tested. And what happened? It failed. People who have tried to use this method could not do it. I think that's grounds to say that the hypothesis is false, right? And what do you do in the scientific method if your hypothesis is false? You have to come up with a new hypothesis and test that. I don't think it's right that Egyptologists can pretty much present this as fact, that this can be taught in schools, that this hypothesis is pretty much how they built the pyramids. Some form of this hypothesis is how they got it done, when nobody has even come close to doing anything remotely similar. Why aren't we being taught that? And with that, I'm going to pretty much end my argument. I think I stated my case. Before I go though, I just want to kind of answer a question that I get asked a lot by my friends whenever I bring this up, and it's, Rico, why do you care so much? Well, I guess my answer to that is that I think it's possible to build a pyramid. They got built somehow, we could see it there. We just don't know how it was built, right? But I think it's possible to build one, and I would like to know how that is. Because, I mean, how cool would that be if before I died, I built like something like a pyramid, or you know, I built like a small pyramid or something similar, and I just left it there, and I didn't tell anybody how I did it. History would remember my name forever, right? Think about how many minds I would open if I was able to do this. Now, before you go thinking that that's just some like out of this world, crazy, like just never gonna happen sort of idea, let me tell you a story about Mr. Edward Lee Scanlon. Ed was the man who claimed to know the secrets of the pyramids, and he backed that claim up. In the 1940s, or around the 1940s, he spent about like 20-something years building what's now known as Coral Castle. You should look that up. Coral Castle. It's built in Florida by Mr. Edward Lee Scanlon. I'll put like a link or something down in the description so that you can look that up. But I mean, look at this thing. Look at these stones. Look at what this guy built, and he built it by himself. At least that's the claim. And he never told anyone how he did it. Look at the stones stacked on top of each other. Some of these weigh 15 tons, even more. 15 tons, though, is the average size stone in this complex. 15 tons is 30,000 pounds, and this guy, who's like 5 foot nothing, right, weighs 100 pounds, did it by himself. So I think that proves that I don't think it was manpower that they used to stack stones on top of themselves. It was something else. And I think what this guy did is amazing, right? He proved it. He left something for us to go look at with our own eyes to prove that we don't know everything. It's ridiculous to think that you do. Keep your mind open. Be comfortable with the fact of not knowing. Right? I don't want to hear any questions about, well then how'd they build it? I need to know how'd they build it. If they didn't build it using boats and ramps and stuff, how'd they build it? I don't know. I don't know, you don't know, nobody knows. And that's the amazing thing about it. But I'm going to figure it out one day. Just wait. You watch. Right? Keep your mind open. Stay woke. Hashtag stay woke. Later.